So, is Paul only talking about initial justification when he says we're justified by faith and not by works of the law? And is Paul talking about good works or just works of the Jewish law? Well, oftentimes you'll hear Catholics, my fellow Catholics, claim one of two things. Either Paul is talking also about good works and not just Jewish law, but he's only talking about initial justification. Or they'll say he's just talking about Jewish works, and yeah, he's talking about justification at every stage in life because Jewish works never play a role in the Christian life. Well, actually, I don't think the Catholic has to take either of those positions. There's good evidence to believe, to show that Paul is talking about justification the entire Christian life, and he's also talking about good works. Say, whoa, 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 whoa. We know in Catholic theology that good works do play a role in increasing justification and a meriting life and maintaining your salvation. So how can you say Paul would exclude good works from maintaining justification and increasing justification? Well, here's one reason why. Because as Catholic scholars like Dr. James Prothero and Father Joseph Fitzmyer have argued, when Paul defines justification in his texts, he is using the justification in one sense, and in our systematic theology from Trent, we're using it in a different sense. And this is perfectly valid, happens all the time. Like, for example, in some passages in the Bible, you'll see the word God defined in terms of an idol. Right? Other passages, it means the one true God. So you can have words defined in different ways, and that's perfectly valid. And the Council of Trent, and Catholic theology broadly, has understood justification as a general human righteousness, not just becoming justified, but also growing in righteousness and everything that's involved in that. But when Paul talks about justification, as again, Dr. James Prothero, Father Joseph Fitzmyer have indicated, and I believe the text sort of shows, is that Paul is talking more about just a basic declarative, yes or no, are you or are you not, foundational, ground level, linear kind of legal status that God grants to us. And so he seems to be using it in a much more limited sense than Trent did. Now, while good works can play a role to increase our justification, etc., in Catholic theology, it's true that also, when it comes to just this basic yes or no status, and no matter where we are in our Christian life, no matter how advanced in holiness, no matter how far along in our justification we are, the only thing that affects that basic yes or no, am I or am I not, is have I repented? Am I contrite? Have I surrendered over my faith, my life? Have I placed my trust and my faith in Him and surrendered over to Him? That alone is the only thing that ever defects that ultimate ground level yes or no fundamental declarative reality that we believe Paul is talking about. So in that sense, we say, oh yeah, that justification, that principle, that ground level status, that yes or no, that foundational linear thing that Paul's talking about, yeah, that applies to the entire Christian life, and works have nothing to do with that. The only thing that has anything to do with that is repenting and putting your faith in Him, surrendering over to Him, right? That alone. So there's how a Catholic can understand that. And then what's the evidence that Paul's talking about good works and not just works of the Jewish law? Well, Romans 4, he contrasts earning a wage with receiving something you didn't work for. It's like an employee earns a wage, but someone who hasn't worked receives justification as a gift, despite the fact they're ungodly. Very general terms. In Romans 7, when Paul talks about the law that we're set free from, one of the commands he says we're set free from is do not covet. Which is a very general prohibition of sin, and not just external sin, but internal sin. St. Augustine comments on that, and St. Augustine says, hey, look, those who think Paul's only talking about the Jewish law, look at Romans 7. He's talking about this law, do not covet, right? It's not just Jewish law. In Romans 9, he talks about before Jacob and Esau were even born, before they had done anything good or bad, not by works, defining works in terms of anything good and bad, and just the basic etymological contrast between grace and works, it kind of draws us into something much more fundamental and anthropological about human behavior and gifts of God and deserving, than rather just the question of whether Jewish works apply. And then, so that would be a reason why he's talking about, not just Jewish law, but good works. And then, what's the evidence that Paul's talking not just about initial justification, but also, every stage of the Christian life? Well, Paul does seem to be talking not just about Jewish works, but also good works, but he is also talking about Jewish works. And Paul would never allow circumcision or Sabbath or eating kosher to play a role in increasing justification or anything like that. So very clearly, when he says you're justified by faith and not by works of the law, he would not allow works of the law to play any role in your maintaining your justification. And again, he's writing to communities that are already justified, Galatians and Romans. He's writing to people that he says, you've already received the Spirit. You've already been justified. And he's telling them about their Christian life and about principles that apply to them, not just something that would apply to them in the past, but applies to them right now. So these are some reasons why we'd say Paul is talking about this narrow justification, that's a foundational, that applies to the Christian throughout their Christian life, and he's also talking about good works. And we don't have, as Catholics, you don't have to say, well, either Paul is also talking about good works, but he's only talking about initial justification, or Paul is not talking about good works, he's just talking about the Jewish law, right? So as a Catholic, you don't have to take that position. As a Catholic, you can say, and I think you should say, Paul seems to be talking about the entire Christian life, justification, start to finish, and he's talking about good works. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Love you. Bye.